Note-taking. Hi, EH peers. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk with you about note-taking while in college. A question I'm often asked is if note-taking in college is any different than it was in high school. The short answer is yes. No one is going to check up on you. If you don't take notes, it will only be to your detriment. Professors will probably go through material much faster than they did in high school. And they don't always tell you which information you will be tested on. Consider all things important enough to learn. So, why is taking notes important? Obviously, it's important to have something to look back on after class, but the act of writing down notes helps information to stick in your memory. This is why, for some, I feel handwriting notes can actually be more beneficial than typing them. We want to be clear that note taking is not just something you do during a lecture. You should always take notes while reading. This can be formally on lined paper or in the margins of your book while highlighting. And please make sure to be reading before class. The professor will be building on this material during the lecture. You should also be taking notes while watching any films for class. Your notes should be based on how the film connects to the content of the course rather than the plot of the movie. For example, if your assignment is to diagnose the disorder of a movie character, make sure you know what symptoms you are looking for before you start and know what the assignment is that you are supposed to complete when the movie is done. You should also be taking notes while in lectures, labs, study groups, tutor sessions, or any time information is being shared and questions are being answered. It's helpful to always be prepared to write down any new information that may come up. Finally, take notes anytime you are going to need to use the information later. If your professor assigns you to go to an art museum or a play, for example, it might be tempting to just sit back and take in the event. This can leave you high and dry when you go back to complete the assignment later and can't recall the specific details you need. So bring a small notepad or use your phone and at least write down a few key highlights. A quick note on textbooks. We could have a whole series on college textbooks, and hopefully we will eventually, but here's a few things to know as it pertains to note-taking. You are in charge of all your own materials. Make sure you have everything you need before you need it. And since you just spent all that money on your textbooks, read them and mark them up. Check your policy, but even most rentals can be written in. Also, just because you read the book, that doesn't mean that you can skip class. Plan for your class lecture and discussion to build on the reading, not just to be a review. Your professor will assume that you have read the material ahead of time. And finally, know that the information in the text could conflict with your professor's opinion. If you don't go to class, you might be missing some key information. All right, so you've gathered all your note-taking supplies. You have a brand new notebook full of bright white pages just begging to be written on. You have color-coded pens, highlighters, Post-its for days. But now you're asking yourself, what do you do with all of this? Let me walk you through some basic note-taking methods to get you started. So let's start with the Cornell method. Your notebook would look something like this. I like the Cornell method because you have room to expand your notes as you gain clarification on a topic. And the summary section makes it easier to find information you're looking for later. Let's take a closer look. The main section of Cornell Notes, the section on the right, is the main area where you will take notes during your lecture. Make sure you leave room on the left and at the bottom. I suggest drawing lines for yourself. When class is over, use the left column to fill in gaps, write questions you still have, or draw any pictures or diagrams you'll need later. Finally, at the bottom of your page, give yourself a quick summary of what's on that note page. This form of note-taking is great for a class that bounces around to many topics or for a quick moving discussion because it's easy to fill in information where you need to later. Next, let's look at mapping. I'm sure you've used these in the past, but I think they're often overlooked by college students. If you aren't familiar with mapping, the main topic goes in the middle and the related subjects branch off in a web design. You can continue to break down each category as you need to. Mapping or webs are great for brainstorming and organizing ideas before writing a paper. They're also great because you can pick the format or shape that best fits your topic. They are also easy to do on your computer. And finally, they are awesome for both visual and kinesthetic learners. I would say the one main downside to mapping is that they don't work for all subject areas, so you will need to be selective about when you use them. So a map of time management skills might look something like this. This student used color, images, words, and symbols, so don't be afraid to adjust mapping to fit your needs and your personality. Outlines are probably what most people think of in the sense of traditional note-taking. To create an outline, typically each topic area is labeled with a Roman numeral. From there, each supporting point is broken down by a capital letter of the alphabet. Then further using numbers and then lowercase letters. You only need to break each section down as far as you feel makes sense for your topic. Outlines are a great option for while reading a textbook because this fits the way most textbooks are written. The chapter is a Roman numeral, the section heading is a letter, each supporting point is a number, and so on. Outlines are also nice because they fit most classes you will have while in college. From English to science to art, outline notes are almost always appropriate. The downside is outlines don't lend themselves to classes where the discussion jumps around quickly because it can be hard to go back and add in information later. The exception to this is if you're writing your outline in Microsoft Word. The outline tool makes it very easy to take notes in Word, and you are able to add in information wherever is needed. If you are set on using your laptop for notes, this is probably the format that I would recommend. Finally, let's talk about charts as a form of notes. They are great for gathering the same pieces of information on a variety of topics and laying them out in an easy way to compare them. This also allows you to see where you have holes in your information that may need to be filled. I personally really like charts to supplement other forms of notes. The other great part of charts is that they are easy to customize based on the information you are recording. You can add columns or rows as needed and title each with whatever applies to the subject at hand. For example, I made this chart to easily compare forms of note-taking. Though it is not necessarily a specific form of note-taking, I want to talk to you about what you should do if a professor gives you access to PowerPoint slides before class. I highly recommend printing them and bringing them to class to supplement, not substitute, your class notes. When you go to print, you will have many options on how you want your page to be set up. These two are my favorite. It's also important to note, having these PowerPoints don't give you permission to skip or sleep through class. Similarly to your textbook, they are just a guideline to the discussion or lecture. They are not an all-inclusive summary. You will hear this from me a lot, but I want every student to know that each of you are individuals and you need to do what works best for you. There's no right or wrong answer. What works for your roommate might not work for you. What works for your brother or sister might not work for you. And you are changing. What worked for you in high school might not work as well now, so don't be afraid to try something new. So let me wrap up this video by giving you a real example of this. This is my form of note-taking that works best for me. I like to divide the page in half, giving the left a little more room than the right. The left is where I take my notes before class, mainly from reading my textbook. The left is also where I might add in charts, graphics, or maps. I can also leave space if I feel like I'm missing something that I might want to add in later. On the right-hand side, I add in the information that is being talked about in class that I did not already get from my reading. I might highlight things that the professor emphasizes because that's a good indicator it will be on the test. This works for me because it allows me to use my favorite parts of all the different forms of note-taking. And I feel like I spend less time writing in class and can focus more of my attention on the professor. Feel free to give it a try. Thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful. As usual, if you want to receive credit for watching this video and attending a workshop, you have a short assignment to complete. Please take the quiz by typing the address on the screen into your browser, or copy and paste the link as it is posted in the description below this video on our YouTube page. If you have any questions, please contact the EHP office.